This is the first in a series of videos complementing our textbook on holistic anthropology. Now the first three are going to be introductory. I'm going to introduce myself in this one. Then my son Badger is going to introduce himself in the second. And in the third, we're going to talk about what holism is and why we prefer it as an approach to anthropology. So we'll start with me. I use an English name for my publications, John Forrest, and that's the name that I used to use in English-speaking countries for a variety of reasons, including the fact that it was the name that my mother preferred, and while she was alive, that seemed appropriate. She actually died in 2001, and subsequently I retired and left the United States to go back to Argentina, where I wanted to reclaim my heritage as Argentino, which I did. I lived in Buenos Aires for 3 years, I think it was. And then I just started to roam around. I went to England for a while, then I moved to China because Badger was living in China at that point and seemed like a good thing to do. Spent a couple of years living with him. Then Italy for a couple of years. Then I decided that I would fulfill a childhood fantasy and take the road to Mandalay. So I got a job teaching in Mandalay for a year. And then I moved sideways to Cambodia, which is where I live now. I live in Phnom Penh. And maybe I can pull up a few videos that I've done, because I'm working on an ethnography of Phnom Penh right now called The Streets of Phnom Penh. And it's partly going to be a textbook or written ethnography and partly a video. And right now I'm in the process of collecting information and doing videos and so forth. And I've talked in the textbook and in the website about how one becomes an anthropologist, so I'm not going to repeat that. But I am going to suggest that it's a particular way that people, my son and I included, deal with the world. We want to know about other cultures, and you know, it's fairly easy for me, not completely easy, but fairly easy for me, because I've traveled all of my life. By the time I was 7 years old, I'd lived on 3 continents. By the time I was 14, I had circumnavigated the world. And I've continued in that respect. I mean, I've lived on every continent except Antarctica and worked on most of them. And it just feels natural to me. But I also realize that there are some people who are very much stay-at-home kind of people who don't like to go abroad. They don't even have passports. At last count, I think that something like 50% of the population of the United States didn't own passports. And that includes members of Congress. And there's roughly 50% of senators and House representatives who don't own passports, which means they have no intention of traveling anywhere ever, not even to Canada or to Mexico. Whereas my last passport got filled up in 4 years. It's a 10-year passport, but in 4 years it was totally full of visas and stamps and whatnot, and I had to get it renewed. Not so much now. You know, COVID changed everything, so now I'm pretty much a stay-at-home professor, and I write and do a little teaching and so forth. But that's who I am.